Thank you for watching this video. This is about my solo trip through northern Portugal. I spent 3 days exploring Porto, Coimbra and Braga, discovering beautiful streets, historic buildings, local food, and experiencing how easy it is to travel around Portugal by public transport. Portugal is a country in southwestern Europe, located on the Iberian Peninsula next to Spain and the Atlantic Ocean. The capital city is Lisbon, and Portuguese is the official language. Portugal uses the euro, and the country is home to around 10.5 million people. Portugal is famous for its historic cities, colorful tiled buildings, beautiful coastlines, traditional architecture, seafood, pastries, and of course its wine. In this trip, I'll be exploring the northern part of the country, visiting Porto, Coimbra and Braga over 3 days. Here's the itinerary for my trip. Let's start with day 1. My day started with an early morning arrival at Campanha bus station in Porto. I arrived around 6 a.m. after taking an overnight bus from Madrid. I took the metro towards the city center. Since I was planning to use public transport throughout my trip, I bought a transport card from the ticket machine at Campanha metro station. The card can be used on public transport in Porto and it's reusable. Since I was traveling around Europe, I already had my Olafly eSIM activated in Spain, with coverage across Europe. So when I arrived in Portugal, I was already connected. I've been using Holafly eSIM for my travels and I really like it. It's super easy to set up and you get unlimited, reliable data. You can choose a single country or regional plan if you're traveling around multiple countries. They also have a monthly plan covering most of the world. I've left a promo code in the caption if anyone wants to give it a try. I got off at Bolhão station. Chapel of St. Catherine is just right across the road. The chapel is famous for its stunning blue and white azulejos, which cover the exterior walls. The inside is also beautifully decorated, with traditional Portuguese tiles and religious artwork. I wasn't even planning to visit it, but I just came out from the metro and it immediately caught my attention. I arrived pretty early in the morning, so I couldn't check in yet. I needed somewhere to leave my suitcase, so I used an app called Bounce to find a luggage storage place nearby. When you're traveling overseas, sometimes you just don't know where to leave your luggage, especially early in the morning, late at night, or between checkout and check-in. I use Bounce to find luggage storage at local businesses and hotels. It's super easy and really convenient. I've left a promo code in the caption if anyone wants to give it a try. After dropping off my suitcase, I headed to Mercado do Bolhão, one of Porto's most famous traditional markets. It's not just a food market. Along with fresh produce, seafood, pastry, and other local foods, you can also find ceramics, tea, souvenirs, clothes, and other local products. It was my first stop of the day, and I loved the atmosphere. Portugal is famous for sardines, so I noticed lots of fish-shaped souvenirs around the market. They even had beautifully packaged sardines that you could take home as a souvenir. After exploring Mercado do Bolhão, I continued walking through the city towards Igreja do Carmo, also known as Carmo Church. On the way, I wanted to stop by the most beautiful McDonald's in the world. It used to be a historic cafe called Café Imperial, which opened in the 1930s. And they've kept the original Art Deco interior, including the stained glass and chandeliers. It was definitely not what I expected from a McDonald's. I continued walking towards Carmo Church. I really enjoyed walking around Porto and admiring the beautiful buildings, churches, and colorful azulejos along the way. I also walked past Livraria Lello, one of the most famous bookstores in Porto. It's especially popular with Harry Potter fans because of its beautiful, magical-looking interior and its connection to J.K. Rowling's time in Porto. I actually wanted to go inside, but unfortunately the tickets were sold out for the day I wanted to visit. If you're planning to visit, I'd definitely recommend booking in advance. I came to Igreja do Carmo Church, mainly because of its beautiful blue and white azulejos covering the side of the building. The church was built in the 18th century, and these beautiful hand-painted tiles were added in 1912. They are definitely one of the highlights of the church and one of the things Porto is famous for. I also found out that there's a very narrow house between Carmo Church and the neighboring Carmelitas Church, which is known as the Hidden House. After leaving Carmo Church, I continued walking through the streets of Porto, enjoying the beautiful buildings, street art, and different views around the city. I made my way to Rua das Flores, one of the most charming and lively streets in Porto's historic center. The street is lined with historic buildings, cafes, restaurants, and unique shops, so it was a really nice place to just walk around and explore. I also came across an urban market, where local designers and makers were selling things like clothes, handmade accessories, jewelry, artwork, and other unique products. I had a quick look around before continuing my walk. I headed towards São Bento station. Even though it's a railway station, it's also one of the places I really wanted to see in Porto because of its beautiful interior. The main hall is decorated with thousands of traditional blue and white azulejos depicting scenes from Portuguese history and everyday life. It was so beautiful that I could have easily spent more time just looking at the walls. After exploring the area around São Bento, I started walking along the Douro River in search of somewhere to have lunch. I passed by Porto Cathedral along the way. I didn't go inside this time. But if you're interested in architecture and history, Porto Cathedral is definitely another famous landmark to check out. I continued walking along the river and eventually found a place for lunch. I had polvo alegreiro with wine. It's grilled octopus served with potatoes, salad, and rice. It was honestly amazing. After lunch, I spent a little more time exploring the area before heading to my accommodation to check in, have a rest, and get ready for the evening. I caught a bus to get closer to my accommodation. The bus stops were easy to find, and I used my Andante card to pay for the fare. You can also pay by contactless credit or debit card, but using an Andante card is €1 cheaper. I caught another bus and crossed Dom Luís I bridge, leaving Porto and heading into Vila Nova de Gaia, just across the Douro River. I was on my way to find a good spot to watch the sunset over Porto. If you want to see Porto and the Douro River from above, the Gaia cable car is another option. It's only about a 5-minute ride, but you get beautiful views of Porto, the river, Dom Luís I bridge, and the port wine cellars along the waterfront. After enjoying the sunset, I walked back across the bridge and caught a bus back to my accommodation. I visited Porto in mid-July, and the sun didn't set until around 9:15 p.m., so I still had plenty of daylight in the evening. I headed back before it got too dark and called it a day. For day 2, I took a Flixbus from Campanha bus station in Porto to Coimbra. The journey took around 1 hour and 20 minutes. There is also a train option which takes around an hour, but it's usually more expensive than the bus. For getting around Coimbra, I got a rechargeable transport card. You can load it with prepaid single trips or time-based network passes. If you only need one journey, you can also buy a single ticket directly from the driver with cash. But if you're planning to stay longer and use the bus several times, this is the cheaper option. My first stop in Coimbra was Santa Cruz Church. This historic church was founded in 1131 and is one of the most important monuments in Coimbra. It's also the final resting place of Portugal's first 2 kings, Dom Afonso Henriques and Dom Sancho I. I really loved the beautiful details inside, especially the traditional Portuguese tiles and the impressive decoration. After visiting Santa Cruz Church, I wandered through the streets, checking out the little shops and cafes on my way to the University of Coimbra. Before heading up to the university, I stopped at a cafe for a little break. I ordered a traditional Portuguese sweet called pão de ló, which is a light and fluffy sponge cake. It was the perfect little break before heading to the University of Coimbra. Alta is the upper part of Coimbra's historic centre. This area is home to many of the city's most important historic attractions, including the University of Coimbra, beautiful old churches, and historic buildings. I took a bus up to the upper town because it's quite a steep climb from the lower part of the city. I arrived at the University of Coimbra, the oldest university in Portugal. Founded in 1290, the university was permanently moved to Coimbra in 1537 and has been based in the former royal palace ever since. The historic university sits high above the city, with beautiful old buildings, courtyards, and views over Coimbra and the Mondego River. The university and its surrounding historic area became a UNESCO World Heritage Site in 2013, thanks to its important history, architecture, and cultural influence. There are several famous buildings to explore here, including the Royal Palace, St. Michael's Chapel, and the famous Jonina Library. I didn't visit the library this time, but the university itself was definitely one of the highlights of my visit to Coimbra. After I left the university, I visited to the National Museum of Machado de Castro. This is one of Portugal's most important museums, with a collection of Portuguese art, sculpture, religious treasures, and archaeological pieces. What makes this museum particularly interesting is that the building combines different layers of Coimbra's history. It includes a former bishop's palace and an ancient Roman cryptoporticus dating back to the 1st century. I also enjoyed seeing the collection of traditional Portuguese sculptures and religious art, which gave me a different perspective on the history and culture of Coimbra. One of the highlights of the museum is the Roman cryptoporticus, an underground structure from the 1st century. It was part of the ancient Roman city of Iminium, which once stood here almost 2,000 years ago. You can actually walk through the underground galleries and see the original Roman structures. On my way back to the bus terminal to catch my bus back to Porto, I made a quick stop at the Coimbra Botanical Garden. It was right on the way, so I decided to have a quick look. The garden was much bigger than I expected and really beautiful, with lots of greenery and different plants. Unfortunately, I didn't have enough time to explore the whole garden, but I was glad I stopped by for a quick look before heading back to Porto, and that was the end of my second day in Portugal. On my third day, I took a Flixbus to Braga, the third largest city in Portugal. Braga has more than 2,000 years of history, dating back to Roman times when it was known as Bracara Augusta. It's also one of Portugal's most important religious centers, known for its many historic churches and beautiful religious architecture. I mainly came to Braga to visit Bom Jesus do Monte, one of the city's most famous landmarks, but I also spent some time exploring the historic center. I was getting to Bom Jesus do Monte by local bus, but I couldn't find much information online about which bus to take or how to get there. So I stopped by the Tourist Information Center and asked for some advice. Luckily, the staff were really helpful and showed me which bus to take. The bus dropped me off at the bottom of the hill, and bus driver told me there is a funicular to go up to the top. The Bom Jesus do Monte funicular runs up to the top of Sanctuary. It was inaugurated in 1882 and is the oldest water-counterbalanced funicular still in operation in the world. There are 573 steps, 116 meters from the bottom of the staircase all the way up to the church. So, if you're feeling confident and your legs are ready for it, you can take the stairs. I decided to take the funicular up and save the stairs for the way down. The sanctuary of Bom Jesus do Monte was actually one of the places I really wanted to visit in Portugal. When I was planning my trip, I came across photos of this place and immediately thought, I have to see this. The whole sanctuary is built into the hillside, with the church, monumental staircase, chapels, fountains, gardens and surrounding woodland all forming one incredible landscape. It has more than 600 years of history and is also a UNESCO World Heritage Site. What I found most impressive was how the architecture and the natural landscape come together. The long staircase stretching up the green hillside almost felt like something from a fantasy movie. If you're visiting Braga, I think this is definitely one of those places worth making time for. Even if you don't want to climb all the way up, you can take the historic funicular and then explore the sanctuary and enjoy the views from the top. The staircase is designed as a religious journey, with chapels along the way depicting scenes from the Passion of Christ. The traditional route starts from the bottom and leads up towards the church on top of the hill. After coming back to the city center, I spent some time exploring the historic center of Braga. I was really impressed by how many historic buildings and beautiful old churches are part of everyday city life here. You can just walk through the streets and come across centuries-old architecture almost casually, alongside cafes, shops, and modern buildings. It was really interesting to see how Braga's long history is still such a natural part of the city today. On my way back to the bus station, I walked through Santa Bárbara Garden, right in the heart of Braga's historic center. The timing was perfect because the flowers were in full bloom. I loved the combination of the colorful, symmetrical flower beds and the old stone arches and historic buildings behind them. I almost felt like I was walking through the garden of an old European palace. And later, I looked it up and found out that this garden is actually next to the former Archbishop's palace. So I guess my first impression wasn't completely wrong. Braga was a lovely way to finish my Portugal trip. And just like that, my last day in Portugal came to an end. You could manage in tourist areas, but there were definitely situations where English wasn't readily spoken. Very good and affordable. You can pay by card in Porto, but cash may be needed in smaller cities. I felt very safe traveling solo and walking around, including in the evening. Some bars and restaurants stay open late in city center, but it didn't feel like everything stayed open late. I didn't see many public toilets, so I used toilet whenever I had the chance. Contactless payment was enough for most of my trip, but cash is useful for markets, public toilets, and some buses in smaller cities. Safe to drink, although many people seem to prefer bottled water. I had beautiful, sunny and dry weather during my trip. It was a little chilly in the mornings and evenings, so a light jacket was useful. Reasonable compared with many other European countries. Accommodation, food, transport, tours and activities were generally affordable. Of course, I had to try some Portuguese food. Here are some must-try dishes, sweets and drinks if you're visiting Portugal. Bacalhau à Brás. Shredded salted cod mixed with crispy potatoes, onions and scrambled eggs, usually topped with black olives and parsley. Sardinhas assadas. Grilled sardines, a classic Portuguese dish especially popular during summer. Polvo a lagoreiro. Roasted or grilled octopus served with potatoes, generously dressed with olive oil and garlic. Francesinha. A famous Porto sandwich with layers of meat, covered with melted cheese and a rich beer-based sauce. Frango peri-peri. Grilled chicken seasoned with fiery sauce of peri-peri chili peppers, garlic, lemon juice and olive oil. Pastel de nata. A small Portuguese custard tart with flaky pastry and a creamy egg custard filling. Ginzinha. A sweet Portuguese cherry liqueur made from sour cherries, often served in a small glass or chocolate cup. Thanks for watching my Portugal travel vlog. I hope it gave you some ideas and useful tips for your own trip. See you in the next one.